Thank you very much that you're here. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from my Macedonian novel in Macedonian language. I write only in Macedonian, so I'm very grateful that you're going to read it in English. Резервен живот. Тоа јунско попладне pre нашата зграда на периферијата на Скопје. Јас, Сребра и Розе си игравме на сосема нова игра, предскажување на судбината. Со бела креда врз жештениот бетон во удолницата што водеше кон гаражите на станарите, цртавме квадрати и во нив го впишувавме бројот на годините, кога сакаме да се омажиме. Сигурно му паѓавме во очи на секој минувач, а се уште и на станарите седнати на балконите или застанати крај отворените прозорци од зградата што не познаваа мошне добро. Имено јас и сестра ми бевме близначки, сијамски, со сраснати споени глави кај слепоочниците, веднаш над моето лево и незиното десно уво. Такви се бевме родиле за наша несреќа, а за срам на нашите родители. И двете имавме долги, густи, костенливи коси, што ни го зацкриваа, или барем така мислевме, местото на сраснатоста. На прв поглед изгледавме како да сме клекнати со допрени глави, една до друга, а удолу телата ни беа слободни, облечени во летни фустанчиња без прерамки, со ластик над градите, јас во зелено, со ситни жолтеникави цветчиња, а сестра ми во црвено, со сини и бели точкички. Сестра ми Сребра, јас Злата, на 12 годишна возраст, можевме само да се срамиме од нашите имиња. Како може деца, девојчиња, да се викаат Сребра и Злата? Јунака веќе обележани деца, со сраснати глави, ненормални за околината. Тоа се имиња за стари жени, за тетки, што чистат по влезовите или за продавачки на компири пред пекарницата. Мама секогаш не замолчуваше со аргументи, кога повторно ке се побуневме за имињата. Така сакаше кумот, Злата, по света Злата Мегленска, а Сребра, по некоја си Сребра Апостолова, што погубила 2 бега во Лерин. Глупав беше секогаш нашиот коментар, еден од ретките што ни беше заеднички. Од крштивката наваму кумот никогаш повеќе не стапна во нашиот дом, како да пропадна в земи. Поточно заменил на печалба во Австралија и за секогаш не отпишал од неговата свест. Злата на клада, Сребра без ребра, не задеваа децата од улицата и освен Роза, понекогаш и Богдан, никој друг и не си играше со нас. Едни не ги пуштаа родителите, да не имаат ноќе кошмари, ако преку ден си играат со нас ненормалните, а други сами бегаа и оддалеку не гаѓаа со каменчиња, извикувајки ретардирани. Розе беше единствената што немаше тешкоти со нашата физичка мана. Живееше на вториот кат во нашиот влез, беше 1 година поголема од нас, имаше густа црна кадрава коса и беше црномурна, малку пониска, но подсврста. Зашто има деца што се кревки, чиниш ветрот ке ги дувне, со тенки нозе, блед лик и ситни, костенливо зелени очи, како нас. А има деца што изгледаат мускулесто, здраво, тешки за носење в раце, со цврсти дланки, како Розе. Беше многу решителна и незиниот збор беше толку цврст, што секогаш се сложувавме со незините предлози. Thank you.
All right, I know you guys are following along with that, but in case you missed anything, I'm going to read it again in English. A Spare Life. That June afternoon on the outskirts of Skopje, in front of our apartment building, Srebra, Rosa, and I were playing a new game, fortune-telling. On the steaming cement of the lane that sloped down to the residents' garages, we drew squares with white chalk and wrote the age at which we hoped to get married inside them. We would attract the attention of every passerby, and sitting on their balconies or standing by the apartment building's open windows, even the neighbors who knew us well would stare at us, because my sister and I were twins, conjoined twins, our heads fused at the temple right above my left ear and her right ear. We were born like that, to our misfortune and our parents' great shame. We both had long, thick, chestnut brown hair that concealed the place where we were joined, or at least we thought so. At first glance, it appeared as if we were squatting and leaning our heads together, our bodies free the full length down. We were dressed in light, strapless summer tube dresses. I was in a green dress with yellow flowers, and my sister was in a red one with blue and white dots. At the age of 12, the only thing my sister Srebra and I, Zlata, were ashamed of was our names. Why would any parents name their children Srebra and Zlata, silver and gold, let alone children already marked by conjoined heads as freaks of nature in their community? These were the names of old women, cleaning ladies, or women who sold potatoes in front of the bakery. Whenever we complained to her about our names, our mother silenced us with the justification, "That's what your godfather wanted. Zlata after Saint Zlata Meglenska, and Srebra after a woman named Srebra Apostolova who killed 2 Turkish beys in Laren." That's stupid, is what we always said. It was one of the few things we agreed on. Our godfather never once set foot in our house after the christening. It was as if the earth had swallowed him up. In fact, he took off for Australia to earn a living and erase us from his consciousness forever. "Zlata's a bird brain and Srebra's a turd brain," children called after us, taunting us in the street. With the exception of Rosa and occasionally Bogdan, no one ever played with us. Some parents, to shield their kids from nightmares, forbade them to associate with us freaks. But other kids fled from us of their own free will and threw rocks at us from a distance, shouting, "Retards." Rosa was the only one who didn't have a problem with our physical deformity. She lived on the 2nd floor of our building. She was a year older than us and had thick, curly black hair and dark skin. She was a little on the short side, but was sturdy. There are children so delicate, with skinny legs, pale faces, and small hazel eyes, like us, that you'd think the wind would blow them away. And then there are those that look muscular, healthy, like they'd be heavy in one's arms, with strong hands, like Rosa. She was so strong-willed and adamant that we always agreed on her proposals. That day was no different from any other. She suggested that we draw squares, inscribe in them the age at which we wished to get married, then above the squares the initials of 3 boys we liked, potential husbands, and below the squares the numbers 1 to 3, how many children we might have. On the left, letters to designate how much money our husbands would have, P for poor, rich for rich, and M for multi-millionaire. And then on the right, the first letters of 3 cities in which we would like to live. My square and Srebra's were close to each other. Rosa drew hers a little way off. Then each of us counted the characters around the edge as many times as indicated by the number in the middle of the square, circling the letter or number we landed on, and then continued around, skipping any circled characters until we had calculated out our circles. And then there's a sketch of what their fortune-telling game looked like. So that's just the very, very beginning of a really beautiful story. And let's have Lidija come back up and talk a little bit about the book and the process.
Yes, thank you for reading. I think I don't need microphone. Or okay. So actually, what to tell you about a little bit about the story. As you see, the book is quite big and quite dense. It is bigger in English than in Macedonian. I don't know why, but probably because of the letters and the print. So it is a story about 2 Macedonian girls, sisters, Srebra and Zlata, who grow up in ex-Yugoslavia, exactly in Macedonia. Macedonia is my native country. And I follow their lives, life of 2 conjoined heads, sisters. That is very difficult life actually, because you can imagine to live every day, every moment with somebody else and not to have the possibility at least for a half an hour to be alone, So you have to go with this somebody else to toilet, to sleep together, to eat together, to study together. So these 2 sisters much more hate each other than love each other. That is normal in this context and situation. So their biggest wish is to separate each other and to be individuals, to have their own identity, their own life. They are 2 ordinary girls who want to be normal, who want to have normal life, but their destiny is something else. So I follow their life until the operation that also happens in the novel, and after that, when only one of them survived and actually told the story about everything that happened in the book. This is the one side of the story. The other side of the story is quite political and historical, because it is a kind of metaphor of the separation of the republics in ex-Yugoslavia. As you know, at the beginning of 90s, in Yugoslavia happened a very, very brutal war that began in Slovenia, where I now currently live, or at least 15 years already. So in Slovenia, it was only for 10 days, but after that continued in Croatia, and actually the biggest and the most brutal war happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This war lasted for 5 years, so it had many victims. This separation of the republics in Yugoslavia was very tragical. Actually, the tragedy was not in the separation as such, but in the way it happened. And we still cannot believe what happened and why happened that war in the 90s. So now we have to explain to our children why this war happened, actually, because it was war, between neighbors, between brothers, and between relatives, between friends. We usually lived very well together, but when we wanted to separate from each other, actually the war happened, and with many, many victims. So this wish of these girls, Zlata and Srebra in Macedonia, to be separated is actually the wish of the republics in ex-Yugoslavia to be separated. But after every separation, there is at least one victim. Nobody is really happy. So the separation always wants victims and blood and everything that is evil and everything that is not okay for the human being. You mentioned Elena Ferrante. I'm happy that somebody said here in the blurbs about I don't know, a kind of similarity between my novel and the books by Elena Ferrante, whom actually I discovered this summer, and I'm very happy. I wrote the novel in 2012. So, and she's now one of my favorite writers, really. She's very, very good. And I like her books because she goes to the end. When she tells stories, and my wish always was to go to the end. I think that in the real life, you have to be polite, to be conventional, to live normal life in a way, not to hurt other people. But in the art, you have to go to the end, to be radical and to tell everything that you need and that you know that you must tell. So this is a kind of motto for my literature, so to go to the end. And I think that in this novel, I made it because I chose a theme that is not so present in the literature and in the art, twins with conjoined heads. That is quite medical. And I had to research about this kind of twins because it's not so easy to speak and to write about these two girls. You have to imagine them all the time in the real space, You cannot say once that Zlata took something with the left hand and I don't know, in another case that she took something with her right hand, but she actually couldn't really move her right hand because it was, all the time with the left hand of her sister, or how they slept. I mean, you cannot say that, Zlata sometimes sleeps on the left or on the right place. They sleep all the time the same. So it was very difficult to imagine all these physical situations of the girls. So I prefer to draw them and to have them on a paper, like figures, to see how they resist in a kind of space, in a physical space. And it was very interesting for me. It was a very interesting experience to write this novel. I wrote it quite quickly, I think, in only 3 months. Yes, but I had the story all the time in my being, and I just wanted to tell it, and it was very spontaneous for me to tell this story. Actually, I didn't want to be in a way educational, and I didn't want to write a story about Yugoslavia and story about 2 girls. Initially, I wanted to tell only the story of these 2 girls. But when I put them in a context, in a historical context, in a time, because they live in 80s, 90s, and the novel is ending in 2012, so in quite recent time. If you put people in a real time, you have to tell something about that time. But in that time when they live and everything happened to them, this time was full of events, full of things that happened, not only in Macedonia where they live, not only in Yugoslavia where we used to live, but also in the world, also here in the States, everywhere, in Europe and so on. So there are many historical and political situations that I mention in the book, but not, not with the scope to make something, to give much more politics to the novel, because I don't really like political novels, They are quite boring if they follow the events and so on. But if you tell a story about human beings, every person is very interesting. Every person is authentic. So you can easily tell a story. Actually, very easily to tell a story about such girls who live in a very patriarchal family in the suburb of Skopje. They don't have any friends because of their heads. You can imagine how they were isolated. So they are very different in their characters. So it is actually the motive of hate between them. If they were similar, it's okay. They both of them want the same things. It's not a problem. But when they are very different, and they are as characters, the life is much more difficult. So at the end, this game that you read it in English is repeating. So the novel is a kind of cycle, and it begins and ends with the same game that we all as children in Macedonia, not only in Macedonia but also in Yugoslavia, used to play and believed in it, that it will be really like that in our life as adults. So we all imagined where we would live when we are big, and who will be our husband, or always some boys play this game, so their wives and so on, how many children we will have. And actually this game in my novel happens in a way. There are results of this game, but when the persons don't expect them anymore, and even they don't want them anymore, So it is a kind of destiny. It may be God's hand or something like that, that in a way actually put the lives of these girls and of their generation where it must be or maybe not. So I always say that I dedicated this novel to my generation of people born in 70s. A generation that I call lost generation. Why? Because when the war in Yugoslavia began, we were 20, 21, 22, 3 years old. We were very young, educated, and so on. And, we were very free, and we had a hope in the future and everything, dreams and so on. About the wars, we learned only in school. And we never imagined that in our real life, we will cope with a war, So it was a big shock for all of us when the war in ex-Yugoslavia happened, especially for the boys of my generation, because the boys from my generation were the last soldiers in Yugoslav National Army. So when the war in Yugoslavia began, they were in many parties of ex-Yugoslavia. Some friends of mine, Macedonians, were, in Croatia, Slovenia, Serbia, and so on. And one evening, when the war began, on TV, we watched news, and we were all shocked when in life we saw how a boy was killed, a soldier. He was the first victim of that war, and he was a Macedonian guy, Saško Geškovski. He had only 20, he was 20 years old. So we realized that something very, very wrong is beginning, And immediately after this event, the mothers from Macedonia who had boys, soldiers in this Yugoslav National Army, organized themselves, and by buses they went to all Yugoslavia to look for their sons. It was something terrible, We all supported them and waited for these boys and carried. So it was very, very difficult situation. Even if in Macedonia there was no war, we were called a kind of oasis of the peace, but we felt the war in Bosnia and in Croatia in another way. There were many refugees who came to Macedonia because it was safe. And, we all the time carried about our friends, relatives, because every one of us has somewhere in another ex-republic somebody, We were very connected before the war. So because of that, I wanted to tell a story about my generation, a generation who was growing up very happy in a way, very normally, but actually was captured by the history when it didn't expect that. And today, this generation of people born in 70s is everywhere. Actually, the biggest number of refugees because of the war is exactly my generation. So not only writers, not only artists, but people, who left or with their parents or alone just to save them, and they are now everywhere in the world. So Zlata and Srebra, in a way, represent this generation of people who lived in very different times, different historical, cultural, political times, and Yugoslav times also. So if you have any question, I speak very much, but...
I can ask you a question. I think that I haven't finished reading the book. I just started it, but the premise of
conjoined twins is really fascinating. And you said that you've had it in your head before, and I'm just wondering, because it does seem to fit in some ways the political situation very well, but it also has this really interesting, these sort of like strange problems you can figure out how they live their lives. And I'm just wondering where you came up with the idea or how it occurred to you originally.
Originally, this idea came to me many years ago. I was in Stockholm for a poetry festival, and it was a kind of white night. In Sweden, there are white nights during the year when really everything is white outside. You cannot sleep even if you put curtains and everything, but it is impossible to sleep if you are not used to these white nights. So in such a white night, I was watching a BBC documentary about two girls who really had conjoined heads from Saudi Arabia or some other Arabic country. And they agreed to be filmed all the time because they wanted to make an operation and to separate from each other. So this film was about their life. Not their life is that, but about the operation. They came to Europe. I don't remember anymore what hospital was, but I know that they selected the best chirurg and so on. So they decided to separate from each other. And it was everything fine, but the end was very tragic. They both died. And we all saw that in this documentary. I was shocked, of course, of that, but I was surprised by the tone of the film that the conclusion was they finally went home separately, even in two caskets, yeah. So, but it was not, I was thinking, I will forget that, so many documentaries every day, so many stories in our life. But what shocked me mostly was actually that doctor, that surgeon, who didn't success to get them separation and to be alive, So he said that for one night and one day, I don't know how long, he was staying on the knees of his wife and cried so much because he didn't save at least one of them. So I couldn't forget this doctor, and I was thinking about that for several years. In a way, I was obsessed with this theme and with the life I imagined of these two sisters who died. So I decided actually to write a novel about such a case, but to put these girls in Macedonian context, in the context that I know. A context that can be authentic, can be real. So after that, it was very easy for me to write the story, to write the novel, because I had all things in my head, and I just told the story.
I have a question. You mentioned this idea of following things through to the end, which really struck me because I feel like a lot of contemporary writing that I read that's, very highly praised and often really wonderful writing, it like ends in a vague, almost cliffhanger type fashion where they it's like a choose your own ending type of thing, and that I don't know, it's like that subtlety I think is really valued in that scene, as a mark of prowess in writing, that you don't have to finish the story and tie it all up, but you leave just the right amount unsaid. So I was wondering if you could talk, and I don't always like that. Sometimes it's nice, and sometimes I'm like, well, what happened? Give me a little bit more. And I was wondering when you said you follow things through to the end in this story, like how do you feel like you tied up the ending and like you're not leaving? To talk about what you mean by that.
Yes, some readers in Macedonia asked me when they could expect the second part of the novel, because it is ending with this game and with other two twins, daughters of Zlata, but they are normal twins with not conjoined heads, so before them is a probably normal life. But it can be also very interesting to see what life they can have after so many things that happen to their parents and family and so on. But in a way, I think that this novel is finished, at least for now. Because, as I said, it ended in 2012, so only 4 years are from since then. And even in these 4 years, many things happened. Children don't grow up so quickly, so I cannot tell a new story about these new twins. Maybe after 10 or 20 years I can. But sometimes when I watch movies, I just don't like when, the end is very confused. We don't know if it is the end of the story or something else will happen, but we will never know about that, So it is sometimes also in the books like that. So in a way I want this old manner of narrative. You have a story, the story has a beginning, middle, and also end. I prefer this classical way of writing. I don't really want to make experiments in prose. Maybe in poetry, yes, but in prose, if you have a story, it must end in a way. Even if in our life, no one story, ends without end. We are all aware of the end, even if we don't want to recognize or, to take it. But if it is an end, it exists. So also in the novels is like that. So I prefer to put a kind of end, actually to close the story with the same game. And this game is happening 30 years after the first game. So in 30 years, many things happen. But it is interesting that now about this game you can find only on some blogs on the internet, or maybe somebody put it on Facebook, But this game is not known anymore to today's children because they don't stay anymore in front of the blog and they don't play anymore, with other children in front of the blog. And, this kind of friendship unfortunately doesn't exist anymore between children. So these two new twins found out about this game on the internet because their mother once told them about the game probably, but never explained them probably how it is played. So they found out about that on the internet and they tried to play it. And it is very interesting how in only 30 years so many things changed. Also the technology and everything, that some things became vintage, some things became retro. It is interesting now to play this game and to see how it will work in the future. And, so for me it's always interesting to come back to the things that we considered eternal, but they became very relative because of so many events and so many information in our life. So nothing is actually eternal anymore.
So you said that you came up with the idea, and your goal wasn't to be political, right? But then in a way, like the life of sisters who want to experience is also like a metaphor of the war. Like, would you say that the feelings they are experiencing and this contradiction, like, in a way represents what your generation, the last generation, was feeling? Like, were you trying to do that? You're expressing the feelings of this verse, or just like?
As I said, I didn't intend to put this political story besides this story of these two girls, but when I put them in a historical context, I couldn't escape, from the real time and from the real space, because the time and the space were really real. I mean, it was Yugoslavia. They were the years from 80s and 90s. Everything was very spontaneous in a way. When I was writing the story, I became aware that, like the destiny of Zlata and Srebra, is also the destiny of ex-Yugoslavia. And not only of ex-Yugoslavia, but also of other countries nowadays. And especially there was a case in ex-Yugoslavia that at that time was not a republic, it was Kosovo. Kosovo now is a republic, but when we were in Yugoslavia, there were 6 republics and 2 kind of provincials that belonged to Serbia, Kosovo and Vojvodina. And this Kosovo, a very small province, wanted so much to become republic, in ex-Yugoslavia, not to go out of Yugoslavia, but to be a part of Yugoslavia as a republic. But nobody wanted Kosovo to be republic, I don't know why. I mean, Kosovo always longed for this to be a republic. But of course, Yugoslavia was destroyed, every republic was separated, and Kosovo and Vojvodina remained with Serbia because were not republics. Even some years ago, Kosovo became a republic, and in the novel, these 2 sisters they know about Kosovo. They spoke once about Kosovo, that Kosovo want to be separated from Serbia, so to be republic. And they speak about that in the way, but one of the girls says to the other, it is impossible because Kosovo, belongs to Serbia. I mean, they are so connected. And the other says, but why not? I mean, like we. If we make an operation, we will be separated. Also, Kosovo can make a kind of operation, to be separated. So in this moment, I think that I realized that every country is a kind of human being with their own wishes, desires, longings, and everything. So a country is not a constitution, a structure of something, but it's a kind of organism. So many things happen in it. And like in these 2 girls, so every country has its own life. And it was for me interesting to make this parallel between countries and between human people. We can talk a little bit after that.
Okay, so we're going to encourage you guys to grab a book or one of her collections of poetry, and I'm going to set up a table for her to sign copies. And another round of applause. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget you can listen to this and all our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.